The morning started like any other Tuesday in our quiet neighborhood of Maple Ridge Estates. I was sipping coffee on my porch when 6 black Suv rolled up to the house across the street. Within minutes, agents in windbreakers labeled FBI were streaming through Patricia Lawson's front door. They wheeled out box after box of documents, while Patricia stood on her lawn in her fuzzy slippers and HOA President's sash, screaming that this was all a misunderstanding about voluntary contributions. Let me back up. I'm Daniel Foster, and my family moved to Maple Ridge Estates 3 months ago. We found the perfect house at 247 Pine Valley Court, a beautiful colonial with a big backyard for our 3 kids. The best part was that due to some old property line technicality from the 1970s, our house wasn't part of the Maple Ridge HOA. We thought we'd hit the jackpot. Patricia Lawson thought otherwise. She showed up at our door the day after we moved in, clipboard in hand, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a blazer with HOA President embroidered in gold thread despite the 90 heat. She introduced herself as the HOA President and informed me that while we weren't technically required to join, it would be in our best interest to contribute the monthly dues of $95 anyway. She said it with such confidence, as if declining wasn't an option. I politely explained that since we weren't part of the HOA, we wouldn't be paying dues. Her smile tightened into something resembling a grimace. She told me I was making a mistake and that everyone in Maple Ridge contributed to the community fund. She actually used the phrase, "neighborhood harmony depends on universal participation." I thanked her for stopping by and closed the door. That was my first mistake. Patricia Lawson didn't handle rejection well. The harassment started small. Every morning, I'd find a new flyer tucked under my windshield wiper about the benefits of HOA membership. The flyers got progressively more unhinged with subject lines like unity through compliance and the dangers of non-conformity. Then came the passive-aggressive notes in our mailbox about maintaining neighborhood standards. She'd stand at the edge of our property with a tape measure, documenting the height of our grass and the placement of our trash cans. One morning, I caught her measuring the distance between our decorative roses. When I asked what she was doing, she informed me with a straight face that optimal rose spacing was crucial for property values. She had a whole binder dedicated to plant placement guidelines that she'd apparently written herself. My wife Sarah found it amusing at first. She'd wave at Patricia from the window while the woman scribbled furiously in her notebook. But when Patricia started photographing our kids playing in the front yard and posting the pictures on the neighborhood Facebook page with captions about unsupervised children bringing down property values, Sarah's amusement turned to anger. The posts got worse. Patricia would write lengthy essays about how non-HOA houses attracted undesirable elements. She created graphics showing property value trends with made-up statistics. One chart claimed that houses within 500 feet of a non-HOA property lost 30% of their value annually. I tried the diplomatic approach. I invited Patricia for coffee and explained that we appreciated her dedication to the neighborhood, but asked her to respect our property boundaries and privacy. She sipped her coffee, nodded pleasantly, and told me she understood completely. She even complimented Sarah's banana bread. 2 days later, a police cruiser pulled up to our house. The officer explained, they'd received a complaint about a possible code violation regarding our fence height. After measuring and finding everything in compliance, he mentioned this was the third call they'd gotten about our property that week, all from the same person. The officer, a tired, dull-looking man named Deputy Richards, pulled me aside and said quietly that they were familiar with Patricia's complaints. Apparently, she called the station so often they had a dedicated file for her reports. He suggested I start documenting everything. Sarah had had enough. As a forensic accountant, she had a particular skill set that Patricia didn't know about. While I focused on documenting Patricia's harassment with photos and videos, Sarah started digging into the Maple Ridge HOA's finances. What she found was fascinating. The HOA collected $95 monthly from 142 homes. That's over $13,000 a month. Yet the only visible improvements were occasional flower plantings and a yearly summer picnic that couldn't have cost more than $500. The math didn't add up. Sarah requested financial statements through proper channels. Patricia ignored the requests. Patricia's response to the financial inquiry was to increase her harassment. She started hosting HOA meetings in her backyard, strategically placing the speaker system so it faced our house. She'd spend hours discussing the dangers of non-compliance, always referring to certain households that refused to contribute to the greater good. So Sarah dug deeper. She discovered that the Maple Ridge HOA had never filed for 501c3 status. It wasn't registered with the state as a nonprofit. Patricia was collecting over $160,000 annually with no oversight, no board elections, and no transparent accounting. Through public records requests and some creative investigating, Sarah found Patricia's purchase history. The woman had bought a hot tub, multiple vacations to Cabo San Lucas, and surprisingly a collection of ceramic unicorns that she claimed were neighborhood beautification investments. There was also a $40,000 kitchen renovation that Patricia had classified as HOA headquarters improvements. Sarah compiled her findings into a detailed report. She cross-referenced every suspicious transaction with HOA meeting minutes that Patricia had filed with the county. The problem was, most of these meetings never happened. Sarah interviewed dozens of neighbors who confirmed they'd never attended the quarterly meetings that Patricia claimed had unanimous attendance. We submitted the report to the IRS, the state attorney general, and just to be thorough, the FBI's white-collar crime division. Then we waited. Meanwhile, Patricia escalated her campaign. She called the police, claiming we were running an illegal daycare because neighborhood kids sometimes played in our yard. She reported us to animal control, saying our perfectly licensed golden retriever was a public menace. She even tried to get the health department to investigate us for supposedly improperly storing garbage. The false reports got more creative. She claimed we were operating a commercial photography business because I'd taken family photos in our backyard. She reported suspicious gatherings when we had a birthday party for our She even called the fire marshal about alleged code violations with our barbecue grill. Each agency found no violations, and several officials quietly mentioned they were getting tired of Patricia's calls. The police started documenting her false reports. Deputy Richards told me they were considering charging her with misuse of emergency services. Then Patricia made her biggest mistake. She sent a letter to every resident claiming that due to new regulations, HOA dues would increase to $150 monthly, effective immediately. She also announced that any household not current on dues would face legal action and possible property liens. The letter was printed on official-looking letterhead with a fake state registration number. She'd even included threatening language about wage garnishment and property seizure. This included several elderly residents on fixed incomes and a young family who'd been struggling after a medical emergency. When they protested at the next HOA meeting, Patricia told them that financial hardship wasn't her problem and that maintaining property values required sacrifice. One of those residents was a retired federal prosecutor named George Hoffman. He smelled something fishy and started his own investigation. When he compared notes with Sarah, they realized the scope of Patricia's scheme. George still had contacts in federal law enforcement, and he made some calls. Not only was she embezzling HOA funds, but she'd been falsifying meeting minutes for years. According to the documents, the neighborhood had voted unanimously on every single measure Patricia proposed, including naming her HOA president for life with an annual salary of $60,000. The problem was that most of these meetings never happened. George found evidence that Patricia had created an entire fictional board of directors. She'd listed names of people who had moved away years ago or had never lived in the neighborhood at all. One board member was supposedly named Jennifer Excellence, which George discovered was the name of Patricia's childhood doll. George and Sarah presented their findings to the authorities, who were already investigating based on our initial report. The evidence was overwhelming. Patricia had stolen over $400,000 over 6 years, filing false tax returns and using the HOA as her personal piggy bank. The investigation accelerated when they found Patricia's secret bank accounts. She'd been funneling money through a shell company called Lawson Community Services, LLC. The company's listed purpose was neighborhood enhancement, but its only actual activity was transferring money to Patricia's personal accounts. The raid happened on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after we'd moved in. I watched from my porch as the FBI agents were thorough, removing computers, filing cabinets, and boxes of doctored financial records. They found Patricia's real books hidden in her attic, detailing exactly how she'd siphoned money from the community. There was even a journal where she'd written about her plans to expand her scheme to neighboring